Well, for some years now, when the inner city of Johannesburg comes up in conversation, it divides opinion. Is it a revitalisation success story? Is it a slum? Is it dangerous? Is it safe? Is it a 21st century African city, or must you never go there? Certainly a lot of people in Johannesburg haven't been there for a while. Well, we're joined now by Paul Lapham, who's CEO of Satik, and Jonathan Lieben, founder of the Maboneng precinct, both active in the inner city and both in business there. They're not NGOs, they're there to make money and to do things, to build things. They join us now. Well, let's start with you, Jonathan. Tell us about the Maboneng precinct, and am I right in saying that there are a lot of people who haven't been there, but if they did, would see something very different to what they expect the inner city to be?
Sure, I think Maboneng is something very unique. It's really an urban neighborhood on the east side of Joburg CBD. It's about 1 kilometer south of Ellis Park. And in that neighborhood, we've bought 35 buildings within walking distance of each other. And we're trying to create a new alternative space for young people to live and work.
Yours?
Well, we're a property investment business. We're not quite focused on a precinct like Jonathan is. We invest across Johannesburg and Pretoria, in fact the whole of the Gauteng area. We have about nearly 5,000 apartments that we own and manage. But we are involved in Johannesburg, which is really where we start, and we're involved in the regeneration of areas like Newtown and Johannesburg inner city like Hillbrow and Berea. So a slightly different market that we're involved in, but some similarities in that we really see great potential in what's happening in Joburg right now.
My question would be why? Why the inner city in particular? Why not go to suburbia and open up some kind of complex or office facility there?
I think that the authenticity and the character that you find in the inner city is something that you can't really find in these new suburban developments that are happening in the rest of Johannesburg. And I think that the inner city, fundamentally speaking, is very undervalued. And it's the core of Johannesburg, it's the center, and it makes sense that people will move back there over time, as has happened all over the world in any major city centre.
Well, I suppose the question is, Paul, there are these perceptions of decay, of ruin, that the city council has allowed certain things to fall apart. The infrastructure's not there, buildings have been hijacked. So when you went in there, and you've appealed particularly to a student market, and you've taken the silos, the old grain silos in Newtown, which as I understand were 30, 40 years not used, no one quite knew what to do with them. And you've turned them into flats. I mean, this is an imaginative step to start with. Tell us how that happened.
Yeah, I mean, give you a little bit of history. There was originally a project back in 2007, 2008. People owned the silos before us, and they had the plan of turning them into residential apartments. 2008 came, the financial crisis, their plans all came to nothing, and they were sitting with these silos which literally sat there for another 4 or 5 years with nothing happening to them. We got hold of their plans, we spoke to them, we were quite excited about what they had in mind. We thought we'd step in and take over that project. And originally we also thought residential apartments. And after a couple of months of looking at the plans and the designs and the location, because Newtown is very close to Wits and UJ, we said student accommodation. That's ideally what we'd like to turn it into. And you might be aware that we've, more than just the silos, which is part of the project, we've also added shipping containers onto the top of the project just to expand the space. So we're really combining a couple of different, conversion of grain silos with shipping containers as well, to put something very different together. And we think we out of what we've got, we think we can create really wow student accommodation.
Can you imagine living in a container? I mean, how would you be persuaded to do this? What have you done to these silos?
First time I heard about it, I wasn't too keen, but I've heard that you've had some rather exciting projects.
We did this, we started, so I mean, as I mentioned earlier on, we're an investment business, but our target is always to give good homes at affordable prices and good student accommodation at affordable prices. So going back about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, we started an R&D program, which was let's look at alternative ways to build housing. And we built an apartment block in Windsor, in Randburg, out of shipping containers, 15 apartments. We were pretty nervous about what the take-up would be. We had a lot of comments from people saying that, you want us to live in a box, and what will the accommodation look like? And when we finished it, we had an open day and rented out all 15 apartments in 2 days. And that was over 1 year ago, and none of those tenants have moved on yet. So that almost speaks for itself, that you can create decent homes in shipping containers. And what we did there was, you combine 2 shipping containers to create width in an apartment, just so that it becomes a very livable space. And we followed that through into what we're doing in the silos. We thought, why not include some of the elements that worked so well in Randburg in what we're doing in Newtown?
Very thick walls, so there's security. Jonathan, talking about, that's residential. Now the interesting thing with you is it's mixed, isn't it? Now tell us how that mix develops, because it's not just you go in and out to work. People live there, there's communities. How does it work?
Well, I always say happy people live close to where they work. And I live and work in Maboneng. The two buildings are next door to each other that I live and work in. And many of the community engage with the neighborhood in that way. And I think for any neighborhood to become sustainable, it needs to be diverse, and it needs to offer retail spaces so that people have somewhere to eat at restaurants and to shop. It needs residential space to live in, office space, industrial. So we think that a mixed use approach is a much more sustainable approach. Interestingly, we've also used shipping containers in our developments, but in the retail context. We've just completed a retail development called Maverick Corner, where we've stacked shipping containers on top of one another, and we've got bicycle shops inside there, furniture shops, and restaurants inside these containers. And I think the attraction with shipping containers is that the economics of a shipping container are really, really attractive. You buy a second-hand shipping container for 19,000 Rand, which is coming in about 1,500 Rand a square meter. So it's really, really cheap. And if you've got additional bulk on your property, it's a really creative way to use that land properly.
Both of you are using shipping containers, but are they sustainable in the long term? Won't they deteriorate or maybe fall apart?
Rust?
Hopefully not.
I mean, when we started looking at them, we've clearly copied an idea that's been used internationally quite a bit. So, shipping containers have been used from everything Box Park in London, which is a retail district, through to Kirtwoon in Amsterdam, which is a student village of over 1,000 students. And those developments have been standing for 10, 15 years already. Now you've got to remember, shipping containers designed to travel across the sea, stacked 7 stories up. And it does that for many, many, many years. So these things have a long lifespan.
Clearly there's demand for what you're doing. Now, there's a context here. There's a city and there's a city council. So there's infrastructure. Now, the danger is that you have a nice little island, and many of us live in islands in the suburbs, shuttled from the society. So you've got your area, Newtown, yours on the east. In between, decay and destruction, perhaps. How do you work with the council, each of you in turn, but Jonathan first, to create the space, not just for yourself, but that people are prepared to be in the bigger context?
Look, there's a lot of development happening across the city. So you're starting to see various neighborhoods and precinct initiatives starting to merge on some level. For example, we're starting to talk to Ellis Park a lot because we've crept up towards that border. And then on our east side, we have Troyville. So it makes sense to start collaborating with those other neighborhoods. What we've done is we've created 2 central improvement districts. One, the Maboneng Central Improvement District, and another called the New Doornfontein Central Improvement District. And basically these are initiatives that are supported by the local municipality and allow for the private sector to add an additional levy whereby private owners pay for security and cleaning of the streets in those neighborhoods. It's something that I guess your taxes should be paying for. But instead of waiting for that to happen, we've decided to take matters into our own hands and start cleaning and securing the streets ourselves.
You've done that too, haven't you?
We've had a different business model. So unlike Jonathan, we've never concentrated on one precinct. We've bought and invested all across the city. I think the city improvement districts Jonathan refers to have made a big difference in the areas where they are. But we're typically not concentrate with our investments enough to take over that function. We've typically seen our role as good accommodation in a particular space, and we allow the private sector to come in. And if you have residential apartments, retail will move in because they see the opportunity. Braamfontein's a good example where you've got a combination of the student market, you've got an office market, you've got retail space. And I was chatting to someone the other day and I said, it's amazing, within our head offices in Braamfontein, within two blocks of our head office, there's 7 new coffee shops that have opened in the last year. Now that's Braamfontein. And that improvement, Maboneng is one, Braamfontein is another area. We have high hopes for Newtown. But I think across Johannesburg, you're seeing buildings actually being refurbished, lifted up. You're seeing retail space coming in there. So there's a groundswell of rejuvenation happening across Johannesburg.
Tell us about the cost structure for consumers in particular, because renting out in the middle of town or versus suburbia, the pricing there must be quite different to encourage them and to market it as a great place to stay.
You might be surprised, actually. If you take downtown Johannesburg, areas close to the taxi ranks, the rents there are not that far off what you'd pay in Sandton City. So the retail rental game is very much about foot traffic. How many people walk past and how many people are going to shop where I am. And Sandton is a calling card in its own name. But as soon as you start talking about railway stations and with taxi ranks. There's a lot of people who are wanting to buy. And just think, logically, it took me a while to understand this. If you're wanting to buy a TV set, you're not necessarily going to go to Game, which is 9 blocks away, and lug a very big TV set 9 blocks to the nearest taxi. You'll buy it close to where you're going to catch a taxi to take it home. So there's an interesting dynamic there about
You raised
costs.
that. Now, what about the transport? You, in your area in particular, working, living, you've got leisure traffic on the weekends. People go into the city to take part in your arts festivals and movies. They've got to get there. Is everyone still in their private cars?
Many people come on in their cars. We've actually started our own private transport concept called Mabogo, which is a shuttle service which brings people from the airports and from the suburbs in a 14-seater van into the neighborhood, just to try and get people in kind of more seamlessly. Then there's obviously the Gautrain, which is around the corner, which I think has had a huge impact. And then the government has major plans to upgrade the train stations. We've got Jeppe train station up the road from us. So we anticipate that becoming an important transport hub. And then, of course, there's the BRT bus system, which has been quite a success. And there's many stops for that system all around the city. So there are many public transport options that are becoming available now.
You're focusing on a lot more student accommodation there, Paul, and you have a bit of a mixture of both. But would you ever see an increase in office space in the city centre? Because it seems as though everyone has moved out to Rosebank or Sandton.
We've just completed our first large office development. It was 6,000 square meters. And what we've realized is that there's a huge demand for small entrepreneurs that are looking for 25 to 50 square meter space. That building is now completely full. And we're looking at developing another 2 office buildings. So we're starting to see that movement back into the city for office space as well.
You're both entrepreneurs. You're making money out of this. This isn't nice NGO stuff for the sake of the city. Well, it is, but you're making money. Just give us a brief idea of what you started with, Paul and Jonathan.
Well, we started in 2005, and I bought 1 apartment block with 8 apartments. So from back in 2005, 2013.
How much was that investment at the time?
I think it was 800,000 Rand we spent. So it's been a long, 8 years, but it's been 8 very successful years where we've built on, we've tried one thing, it's worked, we've tried another thing, it's worked. We've managed to get institutional investment excited in the space that we're operating on. And even to where we're going to now with the silos and shipping containers, which is very much R&D to see, can we bring apartments, decent accommodation onto market at a much cheaper price than what would be done conventionally. So that's really our story.
What did you start with?
My first development was Arts on Main, which was actually artist studios and galleries, and that was the catalyst for the regeneration of the neighborhood, and it's what made people start taking notice of that side of the city. But our growth path has actually been in residential sales, where we're selling to end users on a sectional title scheme. So we've got 1,000 apartments that we'll deliver in the next 2 years on that basis, and we've just sold 350 in the last 2 years.
Any plans to roll these out to other cities, the likes of Durban, which are also underdeveloped, and even cities like Cape Town or PE, the underrated ones?
We've looked on and off at different parts for our business model, which is more an investment as opposed to a sales strategy. We think there are quite a few other cities that are interesting, Durban, for example. But Johannesburg is a big place. Gauteng is a very big place. And if you're going to build and look at things, until we run out of opportunities and land opportunities at the right price here in Johannesburg, we don't really see the need to extend more nationally than that.
I've actually been approached by a number of other cities, both governments within those cities as well as private developers, to partner with them. But I've taken a view that I'm going to focus on Johannesburg. The task of developing Maboneng is big enough in itself. So for at least the next 5 years, we'll be focusing on that. But I have been approached by Cape Town, by Durban, by Sao Paulo in Brazil, Berlin in Germany. So people are really starting to notice Maboneng. We've got a lot of international press as well. So that's helped us get proper exposure.
Gentlemen, thank you both for your time today. Thank you to Paul Lapham, Chief Executive of Satik, and Jonathan Liebman, who's the founder of the Maboneng Precinct. Now,